We are in the Ossining Public Library tonight for our special work session. It's a community meeting. Today is June 10th, and this meeting is called to order. We'll begin with the Pledge of Allegiance.
Flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Thank you.
We have a very full agenda this evening, so I'm going to ask that if we have any announcements, we make them as quickly as we can. Since I have the mic in my hand, and we only have one mic, so it's the talking stick for the night. And you do have to hold it close. Can everybody hear me okay in the room?
Yes.
Okay, good. Notice I'm about an inch away from the mic than anybody else has to use it. I hope you will join us, if you're watching this live or right away, this Thursday, June 11th. The Ossining Documentary and Discussion Series will be right here in this room for our June screening, which is called the Project Wild Thing, and it's a program about connecting kids with nature and the importance of people being connected to nature. So that's the one shout out I will give to an upcoming community event, and I will let my colleagues plug your top one or two things very quickly.
Okay, I'll try. Thank you. Good evening. As you all know, this Saturday is our 35th annual Ossining Village Fair. I invite you all to join us from 10 a.m. to 5 p.m. This yearly production is brought to you by the Ossining Chamber of Commerce, and it's made possible through all the efforts of the personnel and time and resources and planning of our Village of Ossining personnel. Thank you so much. We have the entertainment schedule available for you on Patch and on Facebook. Just type in Greater Ossining Chamber of Commerce. Congratulations to Ambassador Mike Risco and John Girolamo, along with the Board of Directors of the Chamber of Commerce, for launching their Uptown Initiative. You'll be seeing a News 12 special on it very soon about how we're trying to bring that back to life and really connect both our downtown and uptown. So exciting things going on there. I'm going fast, I know. Uptown. My office hours will be next Wednesday, June 17th, from 5 to 6 p.m. at Picante Cafe. And a shout out to our county legislator and the entire Westchester County Board of Legislators for unanimously passing an amendment to the smoke-free indoor laws. So now you can no longer smoke e-cigarettes or any nicotine delivery devices in Westchester County, and it'll be treated just like any other nicotine and tobacco product. So for more information, you can visit westchesterlegislators.org. Thank you.
I want to remind everybody about an event that's going on as part of the Village Fair. The Ossining Historic Cemeteries Conservancy will be sponsoring Holy Ossining, which is a tour of sacred places and peaceful places in the village of Ossining. Be a tour of First Baptist, First Presbyterian, Ossining Methodist, and Trinity Episcopal. You can meet at the Village Ossining Fair Day booth located on Spring Street and Main Streets in Ossining. The tour starts at 1, so we would ask you to get there a little bit early to sign up. We're asking for a tax-free donation, if you would, of $5. The Ossining Historic Cemeteries Conservancy is committed to preserving a lot of amazing history that we have here in Ossining through tombstones and a lot of fixing them and taking care of them and restoring them. So that's Saturday, 1 o'clock. You can meet at the Village Fair at about 12:45 if you want to have a tour of some of the beautiful churches in our community. Thank you.
Manager Zabran, did you want to get us started, or?
Sure. Thank you, Mayor. This evening, this meeting, we have named it Downtown Dialogue. This is a continuation of a series of work sessions regarding the development of the downtown area, more specifically the Market Square site. As you know, I mean, this has been the subject of one of the village's actions, and I think that the board wants to bring the community input. There has been a series of things that have been taking place already, but tonight's work session, we have a couple of items that I think will be of interest to you and the rest of the community. The first topic is going to be a presentation by the village historian Dana White, who's going to bring us into the downtown area, and specifically this site at the Market Square. So with that,
Dana, please join. Actually, Dana, if you want to be able to access the computer, you can either speak into that microphone or you can walk around if you're more comfortable with that.
Thank you, Mayor Gearty. Thank you, trustees, for giving me the time this evening to offer this very brief history of downtown Ossining through the urban renewal movement of the 1970s. I'd also like to thank the Ossining Historical Society Museum, whose wondrous photo collection makes this presentation possible. My goal is not to relitigate or judge the decisions of past village administrations, which agreed with the prevailing philosophy of the times that issues of poverty and decay were best solved by flattening and replacing, in quotes, blighted neighborhoods. Nor is this merely a nostalgic trip down memory lane. Rather, it's a starting place. 40 years after wrecking balls reduced stretches of Main, Spring, and Church Streets, as well as sections of North Highland to rubble, as we discuss how to rebuild the Market Square and Post Office parking lots, it might be instructive to rediscover the sides of the street we lost as a way of envisioning how we can shape the future. I've also included what I call downtown memories, which are excerpts from oral histories I've conducted recently with longtime Ossining residents who remember downtown before and during urban renewal. Our story starts in 1904 with the annual Firemen's Parade down Main Street. This photo is another view of the parade you saw in the opening shot. The entire village turned out to watch. As you can see from the banner, it was an election year. Incumbent Theodore Roosevelt and Senator Charles Fairbanks were running on the Republican presidential ticket. The rest is history. As with many old downtowns, the early years of the 20th century were a golden age for Ossining. The village, from the river uphill and eastward, was bustling and busy, peopled with hardworking men and women, those with deep local roots and immigrants alike, riding the tiger's tail of the new American century. Electric trolley cars ferried passengers up from the train depot all the way to Camp Woods and along Spring Street, to and from Sparta, sometimes reaching speeds of 40 miles an hour. Impressive buildings stood up and down Main Street. They were designed in the Italianate style popular in the late 19th century, with complex cornices and decorative finials and thriving stores on every corner. Now, I love this photo, but what I really love about it is that if you look, you can see the elaborate decorative finials on top of these buildings. And we still have some of them, but they're a very simplified and reduced version of what used to be there. It actually has almost a fanciful, magical quality to me. The intersection in the middle of Main would come to be known as Five Corners, and each of those corners boasted a new brick building. There was the Barlow Block, owned by brothers who had started a successful hardware business in 1844. The Olive Opera House at the corner of Brandreth and Central, shown here after 1908, when the east-facing Barlow building got a new facade and became a bank. And the curving Leander Fisher building, later known as the Hart Building. These three still stand, and they're looking pretty good. The intersection of Spring and Main had its own statement buildings. On the southwest corner stood the imposing Fauché Brothers Dry Goods, while on the southeast corner stood the equally impressive Vance Building. Not much is known about the Vance family, but old maps tell us that before the Civil War, Vance's Hotel had occupied the southeast corner of Spring and Main. You can see a grocery store on the southwest corner where the Fauché Building will go, and you can see at the top of the street, the First Baptist Church, at the time a humble frame building. By this time, Sing Sing, as the village was called from its incorporation in 1813 until 1901, was well along in its evolution from a modest waterfront settlement to a thriving Hudson River mini-city. In the 1870s, a series of devastating fires destroyed many of the old wooden buildings on Main Street. In their place, and very quickly, rose a new and grander Sing Sing, a village built of ego and brick. The Five Corners rose, as did such local icons as the Keenan Building. In 1874, the Democratic Register, one of two local newspapers, wrote that Sing Sing's storefronts have taken on a metropolitan aspect that can fairly compare with similar ones in the city. And when the new buildings were finished, the menfolk would stand in front of them and have their pictures taken. This construction boom applied to both sides of Maine, north and south. Here we see the intersection of Church and Main before the Civil War. Here we see the same intersection in 1907, when I assume they're relaying the trolley tracks. I'm not sure what's going on. Several brick Italianate buildings, as decorative as their cousins across the street, curve uphill from the Vance Building toward Church Street. And at the top of Main, the once humble First Baptist, reinvented in 1874 as a high Victorian Gothic cathedral, stands in all its glory. This vintage postcard gives us a great view of the south side of Maine. For a while, this stretch was called the Mead Block. It would all be knocked down eventually, except for the telephone building, because I guess they needed that. This is my favorite lost building from that side of the street, 156 Main. According to the Democratic Register, the city laundry was established in 1898 with the best and newest improved appliances. That's the old First Baptist parsonage next to it. A new phone company building took over that spot during the first decade of the 20th century. And of course, every village had at least one piano store. Here's that stretch of the Mead Block in the 1920s as seen looking down Main toward the river. The view now looks like this. Church Street began as a quiet stretch, but in the 20th century it became a social mecca where faith and entertainment met. Around the First World War, the Row Building went up. It was sandwiched between the Seaport Flats apartments and the unusual Twigger Building on the right, which was built in the 1890s by a prominent dentist and village president. At one time, it served as the village library. The Row Building served to various retail purposes, including a funeral parlor, before being converted to a vaudeville theater in 1922, featuring live stage performances. It became a popular movie house in the 1930s. The Victoria Theater was remodeled in 1962. It operated for 40 years, and 2 generations of Ossinings's children saw their first films here. Brian Sheridan was one of them. I came of age at the Victoria Theater, he recalls. One of the first movies I saw was Help with the Beatles. I stood in a long line of kids for tickets. The Nutty Professor, Flipper, Mary Poppins. Cat Ballou was the first time I fell in love with a character of the movie. I was quite smitten with Jane Fonda. I have vivid memories of seeing Night of the Living Dead with my friends. That was my 60s cinema world, and it all happened right there. There was a balcony, which I loved, especially as I got older and more independent. We'd hang out up there. We could be a little louder and misbehave a bit. It was a medium-sized place, but it was my world. Up the street from the Victoria stood the YMCA. It was built around 1907. The Young Men's Christian Association described itself as, in quotes, the only public place where young men may meet in social intercourse, aside from the street corners and the upwards of 70 saloons that are in our town. All for a $2 annual membership. Unfortunately, there weren't enough members to sustain the business model, and soon thereafter, the Y became the Ossining Recreation Center, completely falling out. As a kid, Steve Worthy spent many happy hours at the rec center and on Spring Street. The Recreation Center on Church Street was a great place for kids to gather, he says. We had people of all races, all colors. My band played there. It was me and my brother and 2 white kids. We were the Reptiles. Another friend of mine was in a band called the Prisoners. We'd hang out at Avalon Records on Spring Street, across from Asherman's Deli. I bought my first Jimi Hendrix album there. Urban renewal would also take a big bite out of Spring Street as well. basically from the end of this building all the way to Main. That's the fauché at the end. You guys remember it would all come down. Here it is now. Though less glamorous than Main Street, Spring Street, particularly the blocks from Broad to Main, was a stalwart supporting character in downtown village life. It was a lively mix of small eateries, furniture shops, and delis. Industries, this is Cambridge Instruments, now Orchid Condominiums, and mom and pop retailers all in a row. It was the flat part of the parade route. A place to spend your hard-earned paycheck on gasoline and groceries. If you're wondering where this is today, it's the corner of Spring and St. Paul's Place, and it looks like this. Oh, the roaring 20s. Times were good. The stock market was going gangbusters. Ossining was purring along on all cylinders. So much so that in the 1930 comprehensive plan, village officials proclaimed that, in quotes, the village has become perhaps the most important commercial center between Yonkers and Poughkeepsie. But like the stock market boom, the Vance building on Spring and Main would not survive the 1920s. The sign on the side reads, "This entire building to be demolished for a modern store office building by May 1st, 1929, Starling Realty Corp." The Art Deco Starling building was completed on the cusp of the Great Depression, which brought the economy to a grinding halt. But downtown life went on. Kipp's Pharmacy moved to Main Street, and Ankerson's, a luncheonette and drugstore, took the anchor position in the new storefront. Elizabeth Williams, who is 86, shown here on the Aqueduct Promenade, remembers those days. "I was born in the old Ossining Hospital on Spring Street in 1928, she says. We lived on Broad Avenue. Downtown was a busy place back then. There was a bait store, a Safeway food store, a little thrift shop, Woolworths, Rothman's, a liquor store, a cut-rate drugstore, and Hilliker's department store. The busiest part was the corner of Main and Spring. All the high school kids used to go to Ankerson's or across the street to Kipp's, which had a soda fountain. You could still see the trolley tracks back then. My father always talked about the trolley, how they rode it down to the railroad station. Ossining was a nice place to grow up." When Elizabeth Williams was a kid, Spring and Main looked like this. Longtime residents waxed rhapsodic about the shopping on both sides of the street. Main Street was a land of glittering storefronts and bustling sidewalks. Midnight madness sales, when the streets would be jammed with people and you always saw someone you knew. You could get a honeymoon trousseau at Hilliker's, the department store where money and order slips flew around in cool pneumatic tubes along the ceiling. Or a new suit at Fox, a clothing store owned by the parents of actor Peter Falk, who grew up here. And you could finish up with lunch at the Woolworths counter, sitting alongside the high school students. You could get new saddle shoes or kids at any number of stores, including Ray-Bin's Boonery in the old Fauché building. At some point, Fauché was renamed the Gordon Block, until finally the name was removed altogether. Many people lived in apartments above the stores. Jean-Marie Trappen-Stroh has fond memories of that time. As she tells it, "I lived on Main Street until I was 4, above a luggage leather shop owned by a woman named Edna. My mother would think of ways to entertain me. She'd send me to Newberry's 5 and Dime to buy hot dogs and french fries. Then we'd have a picnic lunch in our apartment, which she had spread out a blanket on the floor. My grandmother lived across from Park School. She came from Italy in 1913 and never learned to speak English. But that didn't stop her from walking all the way to our apartment to take me to the movies at the Victoria. My favorite was Lady and the Tramp." You could even get gas on Main Street, too. But that was lower down, past Spring and Main. The block had about a half dozen cab companies. You can see St. Paul's steeple in the background before it was blown over in the 1950s. Now the church is Calvary Baptist. The entrance to the parking lot is down here. Lower Main also had a hotel. Originally erected in 1909, the Acker building was converted to the Hotel Ossining in 1948. Its new Colony Lounge and Bar was no doubt a popular night spot. crossings on the south side of Main threw long shadows across the street. It said that when the river wind came up Lower Main, it roared through that canyon like a freight train. Today, not so much. Ossining has a long legacy of African American citizenship. Many black families relocated from the South in the early 20th century. They established a lively, close-knit subculture in Ossining. Kendall Buchanan's family was one of them. He remembers how in the 60s, Ossining was full of black establishments. There was Curtis's Shoe Shop. When they tore down that side of Main, he moved to Spring Street. In the 60s, most of the bars downtown were black bars. Central's, 105, Buchanan's, the Sportsman's Club. The Orchid Lounge on Spring Street was huge. The top R&B acts performed there. John Cheever writes about going into the Orchid. Shirley Chisholm, who was running for president, came up and had a meeting there, gave a newspaper interview. The Orchid was destroyed by urban renewal. Now it's a poor parking lot for the post office. In 1963, the village celebrated its 100th anniversary in grand style. There was a week of festivities, including an anniversary ball, a beauty pageant, and a giant parade through the streets. Even the prison guards had a float. The parade proceeded down Main Street, past Modern Boats and Harding Brothers Jewelers and Ross Clothing. And as was customary, the parade turned left at Spring Street. There's Diddy May and Bill's in the Fauché building, a popular clothing store of the time. It's hard to look at this vibrant scene and think of destruction, yet ironically, the wheels were already turning on plans to bring enormous change to downtown Ossining. 4 years earlier, the Chamber of Commerce had commissioned an urban planning study, which recommended that every 19th century building in the so-called Central Business District be torn down and replaced. By 1977, the intersection of Spring and Main would look like this. Today, it looks like this. That's the 2015 Memorial Day Parade that was recently held. So we ask ourselves, what happened? Well, it's complicated. It's the same thing that happened to countless old main streets around the country in the second half of the 20th century. Streets designed for horses and carriages struggled to accommodate roaring herds of automobiles. Local manufacturing jobs flew away. Access to an easy, no-stress parking spot became the gold standard for suburban happiness. The Arcadian Shopping Center happened. Built on the site of a greenhouse establishment, once renowned for its prize-winning roses, the Arcadian had a state-of-the-art cinema and it quotes acres of well-lit free parking that lured shoppers and moviegoers away from downtown. And increasingly, poverty happened. Those large, many-roomed brick buildings on the five corners, as well as the Ossining Hotel, became substandard apartments for a growing population of residents on public assistance. The fact is, by the late 1960s, downtown Ossining was looking pretty tired and run down, a great beauty past its prime. Parts of North Highland were a mess. And so, urban renewal happened. An offshoot of Truman's Housing Act of 1949, this federal program provided fundings to cities to clear so-called blighted areas. The promise of urban renewal was that new, modern, and safer buildings would take their place. For years, the village struggled to come up with a viable redevelopment vision. A 1969 plan suggested the village hitch its star to the proposed Hudson River Expressway, a Rockefeller-endorsed thruway that would run along the banks of the Hudson River and then cut up through Ossining to a beefed-up Route 9, thus serving as the, in quotes, catalyst to bring about needed changes to older parts of the village. It would also have entailed a complete reworking of downtown street system. Fortunately, this road led nowhere. And did you hear the one where Spring Street is transformed into an outdoor pedestrian mall? It took 2 decades, miles of red tape, reams of shifting federal and state requirements, and 5 village mayors before the first building fell in Ossining. It was the beloved Victoria Theater in 1972. Followed later by the Twigger and Seaport Flats buildings and the rec center, despite the pleas of senior citizens to spare it. As the village began to obtain properties through eminent domain, more businesses fled downtown. That's the Fauché building. The once proud Fauché was boarded up. They say it was so solid, it took 3 days with a wrecking ball to take it down. The west side of Spring to St. Paul's Place and the south side of Lower Main down to State Street as well. The Starling building came down later. In all, the village lost 95 structures to urban renewal in the 1970s, many of them on Highland as well, paving the way for the widening of Route 9 in the early 80s. Nancy Donahue recalls the destruction all too vividly. My husband and I moved from Ossining to Virginia in the early 1970s, she remembers. A few years later, we came up for Thanksgiving. We went downtown and it was rubble. It was like the Blitz had come in from London. It was devastating to see your town go. This is what she saw. I didn't realize when they said urban renewal that they were just going to demolish everything. I remember driving through and crying my eyes out. I want to cry now just thinking about it. Between 1953 and 1986, the federal government spent $13.5 billion on urban redevelopment and slum clearance projects around the nation. Ossining was one of several Westchester municipalities to take advantage of the program. In Ossining, funds were forthcoming to build affordable housing for residents displaced by the demolition, including Snowden House, Fairmont Gardens, and Maple Hill. In 1980, a private developer built a futuristic office building at 2 Church Street. But the money to rebuild the corners of Spring and Main, the heart of downtown, once the busiest intersection in town, never materialized. So where do we go from here? Upward, of course. A village succeeds not on its buildings, but on its people. On the people who own these places, who work, live, and shop in them. A village is defined by its public spaces, its diversity, and its shared experiences that create lasting memories. So how do we turn the corner to a busier, more vital downtown? How do we turn community spirit into community action? That is the next part of our conversation.
Dana White, village historian, thank you so much for that. And really, I just want to be able to sit here and ask you questions and talk about that, but we have such a full agenda, we unfortunately have to move on. It's going to be on related topics, but I don't think any of our pictures are going to be quite as engaging as that was. So, Manager Zambrano, do we move on to the next item on our agenda? Oh, no, I think...
Thank you, Mayor. The next item on the agenda is actually a continuation. By the way, thank you, Ms. White. Of the same topic. Our next, we will get a PowerPoint presentation by Valerie, who's the village planner, and she will present and deliver a summary of the results of the community input obtained through the MindMixer portal that's on the website. The village will be accepting additional input on this particular portal until the end of this week, which is June 12th. And Valerie will get into the specifics of the results of the community input.
Good evening. For those who don't know me, I'm Valerie Van Ostrom, the village planner for the village of Ossining. All right, so I'm here tonight to talk about, and it's actually a good segue, because I'm here to talk about, as Dina posed, the question of what's next and where are we going from here, and that's sort of where my topic is going to be discussing tonight. We're really focused on the Market Square and downtown post office parking lots. So that includes the post office parking lots where we have the Christmas tree, the Market Square, its parking lot, and then also the other downtown So, I'm here to talk about web-based community input. I'm going to talk about the participants in the web-based input, the results, and then conclusions. So, first of all, I just want to take a moment just to touch base, to explain a little bit. This was a MindMixer platform. It was a web-based community input. This is not meant to be statistically significant. It's just a snapshot or pulse of the community. But it is one of a number of community outreach events that will be part of this particular project. One of the benefits to web-based community input is that it allows for people who are not able to come to public meetings such as tonight to be able to participate in local government. So we had 208 unique participants, 54% were female, 46% were male. We had 7,584 page views, which means that people went to the website 7,584 times. We actually had 2,344 unique visitors, which means and each time somebody who visited the site for the first time was registered as a unique visitor. 90% was from 10562 area code, and our highest response from ages were from 35 to 44-year-olds, and the lowest response was from 25 to 34-year-olds. So, let's get into the meat of what we found out as part of the web-based platform. So one of the things that we wanted to find out was what would be the maximum building heights that you would recommend as part of the redevelopment at the Market Square post office site. And for the majority of the respondents, which was about 50%, wanted it to be no more than 4 stories. So we followed up with that question as to say, okay, well, would your answer change on the maximum building height if buildings did not include any setbacks or changes in the facades? So the reason why we asked that question is because of the fact that, somebody might say they're okay with 7 stories, but if you actually had to look at 7 stories on a street frontage, you might change your mind and actually want to consider having a lower amount of stories. So in actuality, we got feedback that a lot of people felt that setbacks prevent this canyon effect. And a lot of people were concerned with the canyon effect, which would mean that if you had buildings similar to what Dana just showed us, where you had buildings all along Spring Street and along Main Street, there was concerns now that people are used to seeing these views of this sort of open space in their downtown, that you would now create this canyon effect. Other people also responded that it has less to do with the actual buildings itself, but the use of the buildings. One of the things we asked people was to identify the 2 of the most important building elements in any new development that we would see down there. And as you'll notice that the percentages do not equal 100%, and that is because of the fact that we're asking for people to select 2 of the most important building elements. So 61% of all respondents identified that any new building should maintain an integrated pedestrian interface, which basically means that they want to see the public be able to interact not only with the building itself, but also along Main Street and Spring Street. And then the 53% said architectural features should be detailed. So those were the 2 highest responses that we received. The other 3 dealt with buildings, materials, and sustainability, and high-quality materials, as well as incorporating green energy. We wanted to know also how important public space was, and 90% of all respondents responded in very important or important. So we also wanted to find out about the architectural elements and if that architectural element should be listed 3 highest, most important architectural elements in any part of any redevelopment. So as you can see here, the 3 highest that we received were buildings should have similar architectural features to other historical buildings in the downtown. Building height should be compatible and in characteristics with other downtown buildings. And the 3rd highest was materials should be similar as other buildings in the downtown. We also did provide people like the opposite responses. So for example, you can see here where we did have buildings should be similar architectural features. We also had an option of buildings should stand out and look more modern than other buildings in the downtown. So clearly people responded that they do want to see something that's compatible and similar in architectural feature to what is already existing. Then we asked, what if it's going to be modern, extremely high quality modern. And I think that kind of lends itself back to the previous presentation that we just saw, where a lot of the buildings did have very much of they were 19th century, and a lot of them did have that brick and stone and very detailed cornices and elements as part of their architectural character. We also followed up and asked people to submit photos of architectural distinction in the Village of Ossining. And so as you can see, there are a number of downtown buildings that people identified, as well as the Slater building. And of course, there was also a promotion for the farmers market. And then you actually saw one of the buildings that we just saw in the previous presentation. So as you can see, again, very similar in nature to what is already existing in the downtown. Then we wanted to follow up. Back in 2013, the village actually commissioned a consultant to look at the sites. So just to get everybody a little bit familiar, here's where the Christmas tree is. This is Market Square. This is one of the first post office parking lots, and this is the second post office parking lot. One of the goals of this was to identify what could be built in those areas that would conform to the current existing zoning. And what we asked as part of this web-based input was we asked the public as their feedback as to what they saw when they looked at this schematic 7. And what we received was that people were concerned about, they wanted more plaza space and details. They also wanted no canyons, and they wanted detailed architecture. They also were concerned about parking. They wanted more parking. And they also had concerns for the actual uses that were going to be within the buildings themselves. Then we also showed everybody schematic 10. Schematic 10 was also done by the consultants that we had commissioned back in 2013. And this was what could be built, but that would exceed the current zoning. And again, we asked the public as to their feedback on schematic 10. And the feedback we received, again, people wanted more open space. They wanted a better plaza. They really did like the setbacks. And the setbacks, what I'm referring to, is how the building itself steps back. They liked, they did not, however, with the setbacks, they did not want residential terraces. So they really felt that the setbacks should just be part of the building, but not necessarily having the same people on porches, much like you would go into Shoretown and you see people on their porches and terraces. They also had concerns with that it was too high and too boxy. And however, some people did comment they liked this architectural design, these architectural design features better than schematic 7 because of the setbacks. And again, parking came up as a major concern. Now, one of the things that I wanted to point out with the schematic 7 and the schematic 8 is that the actual open space that was provided in both of the schematics is very similar to the open space that you actually have today when you combine both the Market Square stage and the Market Square parking lot. So I think one of the things that, when we started receiving feedback that people wanted larger and more prominent open space, I think a lot of it also has to do with how that open space actually gets created and designed, which actually leads us to the next topic, which we started asking people, okay, what type of public space is most important for this type of redevelopment? And we actually asked people 3 different types of open space. One is program space, which really deals with, and we define it as basically your events. It's a very event-driven space. You have passive space, which is basically your city parks, and then you have active space, which is your recreational fields and playgrounds, that type of public space. And so as you can see here, program space definitely was the highest amongst the people that responded. So then we followed that up as to, if we are going to go focus on program space, what type of program activities would you like to see? And so as you can see here, then there was a wide range, and we allowed pretty much more or less unlimited commenting on this particular topic. But 82% said they wanted to see outdoor music and concerts, farmers markets, festivals and fairs, art exercise or physical activity events. We also asked what kind of amenities should be part of a public space. These were the top 8. Again, outdoor furniture, food or sitting and eating, benches, gardens, stage, fountain, seat walls, pavilion, gazebo, or pergola. And as you can see, many of these amenities also relate or directly relate to amenities that you would find in areas of programmed space as well as areas of some passive space. So then we followed up with, is there any other physical amenities you would also recommend as having part of the public space? We got a lot of responses back for restrooms, food trucks, pop-up restaurants, and then again, more open space itself. So we also wanted to take the pulse of what do people consider great public spaces? And so here we asked for people to actually submit visual images of what they consider great public spaces. And so we received comments back, and as you can see here, some of these relate to, we got stuff from Brooklyn Bridge Park, we have stuff from New York City, Yonkers, we also have Santa Maria and Rome, Madison, Wisconsin, Glendale, California, Portland, Oregon, and Union Square. So these are all great examples of public space, and I think one of the challenges that we will find that some of these, as you can see, especially in some of these larger squares, are definitely more than your 16,000 square feet that we would probably be dealing with on any redevelopment of Market Square. However, various elements could always be included into those types, into the type of open space that we would be creating. So, another major issue that we've talked about and is continuously a conversation in the village is parking. So we asked people if they found that they had a problem finding a parking spot in downtown. And we received 40% said yes, and the other 60% either said no or depends on the time of day. So we asked, should parking spaces for the public be required as part of any redevelopment? Because as you know, if we redevelop the sites, we will be redeveloping current municipal parking spaces. So 88% of respondents said yes, public parking should be part of the redevelopment. Only 12% said no, the developer should provide parking for the site, and parking can be private. So then we asked, please submit parking ideas. What are your ideas that you think that would help with parking in the downtown? And we received a lot of responses for structured parking, especially the Brander Street lot, behind the Brander Street lot. Shuttle bus, make more long-term parking, add more spaces onto Route 9, parking spaces onto Route 9, underground parking, and then just the village needs more parking lots in general. So, as everybody, or as many people know, that if the village were to create more parking or structured parking, sometimes this actually requires some sort of village funding. And so we asked, would people be in support of village funding projects that would create more parking? 32% said there was too little information for them to make a decision. However, we did receive about 50% of the total respondents actually said yes to 29% said yes, even if there were a village would fund the project 100%. 23% said yes if the project was partially funded by the village through a public-private partnership. And only 14% said they do not want the village funding this type of project. So now we got to uses. So what we wanted to find out was what types of businesses do people want to see in any sort of redevelopment of the Market Square post office lot. And so the responses we got, actually parlor, small hotel bed and breakfasts, micro business, craft breweries, restaurants, catering, performance hall, businesses that would just maximize tax revenue, and businesses that would create a recreational draw. So then we followed up with what non-residential uses do you think should be incorporated into any redevelopment, specifically of Market Square and post office lot. And what we got there was professional office, restaurants, farmers market, entertainment, bars, breweries again, coffee shops, cafes, retail, artist workshops, and specialized education. Then we asked, non-residential uses in any building constructed and the public blend together. And we got a resounding yes, absolutely, there should be a seamless transition between the ground floor building uses and the public space. So clearly the public wants to see some sort of integration between whatever gets built and the public space itself. So then we pose the question, because in any particular development, you always have this tug of war between the buildings and the space that they occupy and the open space and the space that that occupies. And so we ask people, what do you think will have a bigger impact on the downtown in this redevelopment, buildings or the public space? And what we received was a mixture. A number of people felt that these were open-ended questions, so there's not really statistical analysis behind these. New buildings are more important because buildings can be operational all year long, where public space only has a certain time frame. Other people felt open space was extremely important, and then also programmed open space. And then other people felt that it should be a blend between the two. But all the choices honed in on one particular objective, which is to bring more people to the downtown, no matter what ultimately ends up being built in that particular area. And more people brings us to the next set of questions. We wanted to know, okay, so yes, clearly people were asking for people to come and visiting our downtown through new businesses and open space and program events. But we also wanted to know, do we need more residential units in the downtown to help with revitalization efforts? And we got a very positive response on that more residential units. 44% said yes, but equal to or less than the amount of non-residential uses that we built. 30% said yes, whatever the market would require, and only 26% said no, we do not need any more residential units. So then we asked what type of residential units should be built as part of this project. 46% said any type, let the market decide. 35% said studios and one bedrooms, and 19% said studios, ones, and two bedroom units. So, in conclusion, I believe that the results that we received really had a number of key points. One, that buildings should be a character for the rest of the downtown. High quality and cohesive architecture are extremely important. Open space is also a very important component of whatever takes place, but the open space should be programmed. The village must address parking when dealing with redevelopment of the site, and new uses should be incorporated and interact with the public space. However, new uses should draw people to the downtown. And I think I just wanted to take a moment to say, you know, when I looked at these conclusions and I looked at the results, these are very similar to a lot of the other feedback we have received throughout the years, dealing with the comprehensive plan, dealing with other downtown redevelopment. We keep seeing these same types of points and objectives, goals, resurfacing itself every time we deal with downtown development. So it was nice to see that it still is, and these are still the goals of the community and sort of the vision of what we're seeing, at least in this web-based input of the community. So, in conclusion, I just wanted to take a minute. People can still go on to MindMixer and actually finish filling out. There's a few questions still left, and the questions will end on June 12th. Then MindMixer is still the same company, just changing platforms to MySidewalk. So what you're going to see eventually soon, those who are on MindMixer, you will receive notification that MindMixer is going to change to MySidewalk, and it's going to redirect any visitors to your from the MindMixer site to Sidewalk, and it's going to notify all participants of the change. And the village will continue requesting information from the community and asking the community various questions on various village topics, and I believe the village is working on the next set of topics as we speak. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Valerie. I'm just wondering, by show of hands, how many people who are in the room right now have been on and participated in the Mind Mixer platform? Because I know there are at least a couple hundred people in the community, and several of them are in this room. Very good. So as we change to the My Sidewalk platform, I hope that all of you will continue to be engaged. It's a slightly different, enhanced platform that has more opportunities for participants to be interactive. So I'm excited for the opportunity there. Now, the reason why Valerie brought this platform to the village was because we talked about the importance. This board is really committed to making sure before we make any big decisions about changing those parking lots into anything else, we want to make sure that the developer we're inviting in here, that we know what we're telling them. Who is Ossining? What's really going to work here? And so that's why we established these online outreach platforms. But that's not enough, because there are 26,000 people who live in this village, and there are many more who consider the village of Ossining their heart, their downtown, and then there are many people who work here every day. So we really need to hear from you. And if you're not going to log on to Mind Mixer without me taking your hand and putting it on the computer keys, I'm going to go to you. So that's what we're talking about tonight. These Heart of Ossining workshops. We've referred to the Market Square properties as being the heart of our downtown. The Heart of Ossining is, in this sense, a physical place as well as something a little more visceral. It's the heart of our community, and that's what we want to hear from you about. So, our overall goal is to revitalize downtown Ossining by making it a more vibrant, welcoming place to spend time, and to define and reflect the unique character of Ossining in whatever we do. So, you're going to help us define our character. And this is the schedule as it's laid out. Starting next week, we could be scheduling to come to your church basement, your neighborhood group, your whatever community organization you have. Myself, the trustees, other community members have committed to coming out and making these in-person workshops for your small group of friends, family, neighborhoods, community groups. So we're going to devote our summer to doing that. And then, in September 23rd, we'll be right back here in this room. We're going to tell you what you and your neighbors and other community members have said. And then in the fall, we're going to take all that information, put it into a real vision plan for what we see, and that's going to drive the RFP that we send out to developers later this fall. Okay? So, this is what the workshops will be like. I should introduce this lovely woman right here is Rachel Crawford. She's a new resident of Ossining, and this was actually her idea when she came to me several months ago and said she's a new resident, she's so excited, she wants to do great things here in the community. And I said, hey, well, this is where we're at with Market Square, and we've got an online platform, and we're just getting started. And she said, you should do a road show. And I said, what are you talking about? And so she said, well, this is what I used to do in the community where I worked in Brooklyn with a nonprofit. So she agreed to help put together this workshop that we're now going to be taking out to the Ossining community. So thank you, Rachel.
Yes, and hello everyone. I would just say one thing that I think is an important difference between the information that you can get online, which is extremely useful, and the information you can get through person-to-person conversation is really that feeling of what Ossining means to people, and the vision of both what we think it is today and where we think it can be tomorrow to be better and more reflective of why the community loves living here and the great parts of Ossining that already exist, as well as sort of the vision for the future. So I think the purpose of the in-person meetings is not necessarily to talk about exactly what building we think we're going to build and exactly how it will look, but more so kind of what direction do we want to take and how can we best communicate that to the people who can help us get there.
Great, thank you. So, during the workshops, we'll ask you some really open-ended questions, like some of these. What do local residents know about Ossining that outsiders do not? Or what would draw you to Ossining's downtown more often? If you think about the last 5 times you went out to dinner, you went out and bought something, how many of them were in downtown Ossining? And if all 5 of them were not in downtown Ossining, then what don't we have that somebody else has? And then we're going to look at some images, and which some of those images, some of these are going to be reflective of, or echo some of the images that people have posted on MindMixer. And so, we'll have some vision boards. In fact, during the Village Fair, I hope you'll come down to the Village booth, and we will have some images of like what you're going to see here, as well as more expanded. And you'll have an opportunity to just immediately have a reaction. This is something that speaks to me. This is something that would make me want to come downtown, and you're going to be able to show us in a very tangible way. And that's, so lodging has been brought up as a suggestion. We don't have any hotels here in Ossining. In fact, there aren't any on the Hudson Line anywhere near here, walking distance to a train. And as we saw, we used to have our own hotel. And flexible retail, which has come up in the form of whether it's an indoor market, pop-up stores, some sort of flexible modular spaces to be able to have that gathering space on a year-round basis. And there are many models for that in the area in the country that people have suggested as possibilities. And so, that's our last slide, right? Okay, then my ask for you is take a moment, think about all of the community organizations that you are a part of. And how important is it to yourself, to the organization, and to your other members to make sure that the decisions that the village is making right now are going to be wise decisions that are going to support what you know our community can be. If you and some other folks in your neighborhood or your organization can contribute to that conversation in any way, then please send me an email, garrity@villageofossining.org. Let's put a date on the calendar for this summer so we can do a Heart of Ossining workshop with your group. Is there anything else you want to add, Rachel?
They'll be really fun. So I should definitely schedule one. But honestly, it is an opportunity that a lot of people feel like they don't have to just really look at a bunch of inspiring photos. There will be many, many more than this and a couple more categories. And really just kind of open the dialogue about what gets everyone excited, and they're usually pretty fun. So that's my pitch.
Thank you. And it won't take us more than like a half an hour, really?
Yeah.
Right.
Okay. Depends on how talkative everyone is.
Very good. All right, thank you very much. And with that, I'll turn it back to Manager Zambrano.
Thank you, Mayor. As a way of introduction, on February 18, 2015, the Village Board adopted a complete streets policy in an effort to improve safety in the streets, especially for children, residents, and visitors. The intent of this policy is to be incorporated into the village code at some point. So Valerie initially presented to the board and to the committee a summary and an update of this particular policy.
Good evening. When I was last in front of this, before the board, we talked about Tri-State Transportation Campaign, doing a free walking audit in the village of Ossining. So I'm here tonight to report a little bit more. The board wanted to know a little bit more about the free walking audit and some of the decisions you'll have to make. So first of all, the board wanted to know how many groups and people can accommodate on the walking audit. So Veronica Vanderpool.
May I have your attention, please? The library will be closing in a half hour. Please note that computers will be shutting down in about 15 minutes. Please save all your work.
So that's why we keep jumping very quickly from one item to the next. So without much interlude. Sorry, Bella, continue.
Yeah, so anyhow, so Veronica and our staff can lead maximum 2 groups, and each group can accommodate between 10 to 15 people, so for a maximum of 30 people. The days of the week that we can conduct the walking audit is completely up to the board's choosing, so it can be anywhere between Monday through Friday or on Saturdays. The time frame for conducting the walking audit is usually a half an hour prior to the walking audit. They'll meet with village staff to go through the materials in the route. And then it's a 2-hour walking audit over about a 0.25-mile radius. 45 minutes after the walking audit to debrief and discuss what was learned from the audit. And then they'll also need a room at Village Hall or somewhere along the walking audit that will be to be reserved for a debrief and a discussion. And the actual coverage area is completely up to our choosing as well. However, the walking area will be 0.25-mile radius, and each group will take a different walking audit. And then, so what I need from this board tonight is we need to talk about dates I need to at least define, do we want to do something on the weekends? Do we want to do something on the weekday? Or do we want to push this off?
I think for most board members would be able to be more flexible on a weekend.
Okay. So if we were looking at a weekend, you know, July, in July, we're pretty busy dealing with grants and putting out some other additional work. So we were thinking if we do a weekend, it would probably have to be somewhere in either August or September. Is those months doable for this board? And then we can deal with the actual dates later on.
I'm sorry, we're just all looking at our calendars, and you know, can we circulate a few dates? But I think August or September, we're talking about like a Saturday or something. Do any of us have any super awesome summer vacation plans to take us away for most of the summer? I know I am lame and will be here most of the summer.
Okay, that's fine.
Not lame,
And
excited to be in Austin for the summer. Yes, there's so much great stuff going on here.
So what I'm going to do is, because Veronica actually, she wanted us to get sort of a ballpark of when we might have the, what day of the week we're thinking and what month, because she's trying to plan her vacation as well as the other. So that was one of the reasons why I needed to come back tonight. But then also, I need this board to start thinking about what goals you want to achieve with this walking audit. So do you want this audit to actually identify very specific projects? Do you want this audit to identify the, you know, look at the environment? These are some things that you're going to need to also, she's going to need feedback before we actually plan what it is that the walking audit's going to contain.
Yeah, I was just going to say that I would hope that the audit would produce some actual items. I think just with respect to just having things, you know, we need to gather elements and we need to make some decisions as far as prioritizing, you know, different areas of the village that we feel we want to focus on more than others, that we think are critical in terms of the overall plan. I mean, I realize we can't cover the whole village, so I would like to see the audit and the discussion help to kind of narrow down those focuses and the places where we do decide that we do need focus, that we get ourselves prepared to try to find grant money to execute on some of these things. I think that's, you know, to me, it's all about shovel ready. Grant money comes and goes so fast you can't even keep track of it. So to the extent that the board can come to consensus on some areas that we think are really important, I think that would be most helpful, and that's what I would like to see achieved through the audit process.
And I'm actually going to echo that part with John. But something that we have to realize is, with this audit, we have to, whatever happens at that time, we have to make sure it happens before the end of the year. Because I think it's critical for us to start engaging what's going to happen for the next part, which is the RFP. Because I think we are going to be concentrating in that area, which is what this whole meeting has been about. So if we want to do something, we want to engage the community to come here, I think it's enough talking, let's start making some things happen. That's just my opinion.
Yes, I would say that once we identify the exact, you said the 1.2 miles is
It's actually
the
a
audit?
0.25 mile radius.
Okay, so once we establish our audit, then we would have to see what the needs are, what our challenges is, what our vision is for that area in particular. Trustee Casada made a great point that even though it may seem like it's piecemeal, so we're focusing only on Market Square now and then we're moving on, we do have a wholesome approach, because walking audit obviously would affect the redevelopment of that same area as well. So we want to make sure that that is in sync and that you're also part of that process. So I agree. However, one thing I do have to say for those that are watching, and Valerie, you're probably going to agree with me, because it's facts for everyone, is that unfortunately we don't know if we will get grants. We'll try our hardest, but we have to decide, if we pick a project after the walking audit or a vision, what is our action plan to actually implement that? with grants or without grants, right? So is it a year plan? Is it a 2-year plan? Is it a 4-year plan? You know, we may have to invest the money in it. We may not. If we get some grants, it may be supplemented, but that also should be part of the whole, you know, discussion.
Great. Okay, so then I'm looking at the calendar. Saturdays, we have Summerfest August 1st. The next 4 Saturdays are good for me, the 8th, the 15th, the 22nd, and the 29th. Does anybody else know if they're going away or they've got anything on the calendar yet? Okay, so can you start with that?
Yeah, we'll start with August dates, yeah.
Okay.
And then what I'm gonna do is we'll put together a memo for this board as to possible quarter-mile radius for 2 different areas, because we're also taking into consideration that we have the Spring Street 2-way project undergoing. So we want to make sure that we don't, you know, duplicate work, and we want to also make sure that that gets incorporated into whatever walking audit we do does take place. So we'll try to avoid those intersections, but then incorporate that work into it.
And when you're talking about the scope, I think a couple of things to keep in mind that I think should be priorities for us to consider is the connectivity between, you're talking about a quarter square mile, which I'm not entirely sure what that means from point A to point B and what we have in the village. But when I think of all of the key social gathering spots we have in the village and connecting them and making sure that if you're at the library, you realize you're really very close to downtown, and how welcoming is it to walk from the library on Croton Avenue to downtown Main Street. Same thing is from the community center. You are really close to Main Street from the community center, but it's a funny little pathway to get there, but most directly, and people may not realize that. And then obviously our waterfront, which from the library to the waterfront may span more than the anticipated radius, so I'm not sure how to prioritize, but those are some of the things that mean a lot to me, is how easily connected are our central gathering spaces to each other. As well as, you talked about the Spring Street 2-way, and I know some of the grant work that you're going to be doing right before we have this walking audit is going to be focusing on Route 9 and some of the additional grant work I know you're working on. The library kind of takes us through that Route 9 133 intersection, which is obviously a spot that I think her input and a walking audit would be valuable to address.
Okay, absolutely. So what we'll do is we'll come back with some options for this board to consider, and then we'll go from there.
Thank you.
Nice. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yes, I think that that's really important to make sure that, all our residents, and this board has said it numerous times, the holistic view that Spring Street past St. Paul's is still downtown, State Street is still part of downtown, or waterfront. So the connectivity objective is really a necessity. So I just wanted to echo that.
Thank you. Absolutely.
Yeah, just to kind of overall this whole thing, we know we're talking about money and how doable this project could be at the end of the day. There is some money on a project, the waterfront, Kingsbridge project. There is a big chunk of money in there that's actually determined for the downtown area. And there's a committee called the Downtown Committee, which is Steve Omar is part of it now. And I think, if anything, could be something that we could look at this as part of a project that could be funded for the end of the year or something along those lines.
You're talking about taking all of these ideas, all of the research that we have, whether it's the walking audit, the online platform, the Heart of Austining workshops, and creating really a vision plan for the Market Square development and beyond. More in depth, more today than we have for our comprehensive plan. Okay, so does that make sense? And,
yeah.
And you can bring that back to the Economic Development Council for consideration, sir?
Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. The next topic is 200 Main Street, and again, as a way of background, on March 11, 2015, the village released a request for proposal on both occasions, seeking proposals from potential developers for the village-owned property located at 200 Main Street. Ingrid Richards, the village's downtown manager, was put in charge of the project, and she's before the board tonight to give you a summary of the 3 proposals that we received on May 15, 2015.
Village Manager Zambrano. Just to repeat a little bit, on Friday, May 15, 2015, the Village of Austining received 3 proposals in response to its 200 Main Street request for proposals. The RFP was sent to about 23 developers, entities, and there were a total of 10 visits to the site. As background, and as many of you already know this, but I just want to say this again, the 200 Main Street building was erected in 1908, last occupied about 30 years ago, and gifted to the village by Mr. John Gouveia in 2004. This building and its eventual occupation is important to the village for a number of reasons. It was placed on the National Register in 1988 for its historical and architectural significance. The building's high visibility in the downtown area, which makes it a highly desirable building to any retailer or developer. And finally, this building, once occupied, will help to continue the revitalization of our downtown area. So, the proposals that were received are as follows. Center of Energy. This proposal is offered by the Corinthian Group LLC in collaboration with Rosewalk Properties LLC and provides for a working kitchen, restaurant, cafe, yoga, dance studio, event space, and a place where local artwork can be displayed. This proposal, if accepted, would offer a community space whereby eating, fitness, and communal interaction would be fostered. That's always been important to the village and the downtown, the communal interaction and residents and visitors getting together and having a wonderful experience in our downtown. This proposal now anticipates a 9-month timeline for interior and exterior work. The proposal provides for a budget of $1.3 million for the upgrade, $75,000 for the display of artwork, and $75,000 for the potential acquisition of this building. Obviously, with the preferred developer status, developers have the opportunity to go into the building and review what's, the measurements, any issues with the building to get a more defined cost estimate. So this is just from the site visits and what they've seen. This is not the real work that goes into providing that cost estimate. The second proposal that was received is Luciano's Wine and Cheese. This proposal is offered by New York Green Development and will provide a 4-star Italian restaurant named Luciano's Wine and Cheese. This proposal provides for a main dining room, wine and cheese tasting bar highlighted by hanging wine and cheese gallery, pizza bar, and private event space. The second floor will offer a VIP dining area. There will also be an outdoor dining area on the roof of the southeast wing. The basement will house kitchen prep, storage, and wine cellar for customers. Total cost potentially is $1 million or $919,000. And this particular applicant says that they would like to do further review to determine what the acquisition of the building would actually be. So that wasn't included in the proposal. The last proposal that we received is
May I have your attention, please? The library is closing in 10 minutes. If you have any items you wish to check out, please bring them to the circulation desk now. The library will be open tomorrow from 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. Thank you and have a good evening.
Okay, just 2 minutes. This proposal will offer a commercial space. Williamson County Investment Corp. Offers this. Restaurant, retail, and offices. This particular proposal wasn't as gelled as the other two. The total cost of restoration would be $3 million, a little over $3 million. This proposal would also request a $280,000 village grant. The developer expects to lease the property by the beginning of 2017. One concern as I reviewed this proposal was that I wasn't able to prove, financial stability, wherewithal, resume. So my suggestion would be to throw out this particular proposal and work with the other two that I just mentioned. However, that is definitely the board's decision to go through all three. Again, I believe that the proposals do create a wonderful environment for residents and visitors to have a space to work and play. And I would request that the village board invites these applicants or these entities to come to the next village board work session to present.
Well, we certainly want to understand that more in depth. It may be more appropriate to ask you off camera, considering the nature of the question, but the entity that has the highest price tag of what they're anticipating that they're going to want to invest, you haven't been able to verify their financial credibility, but I like the fact that they understand it's going to be a very expensive venture, and I would be concerned about people who might underestimate the investment that's required to make it a success. So, yes, I'd like to learn more, but I'm not going to eliminate anybody yet until we understand more about it.
Yeah, I agree. Part of that, though, they're asking the village to invest $250,000, which I guess to apply for a grant. Correct. I think it's important, just like Andrea mentioned, that I think it's important for us to just to understand, even though I think we've all read the documents, it's important for them to come in for like a small meeting presentation. And Ingrid, if you don't mind asking them to have a PDF presentation that will be available for us, and we can show it at a work session as well, and probably we can put it on our website and part of a discussion going forward. So if we can get that information, I guess I'll look in for the next work session.
I would ask managers around to schedule it.
Yes, we'll go ahead and do that. Now, I really couldn't hear you.
No, I'm sorry. So are we looking to have the developers come in the next work session, or we're looking within a month and a half, I guess?
Well, we will look at the schedule of work sessions, and we can certainly put it on the agenda as soon as early as possible.
Yeah.
I think we need to move, we want to get the board to give us some guidance as to how you want to move in a relatively quick time frame. I think while things are, while there's interest, we need to take action. So we will get, I think I heard you say that you want a PDF format of what we have right now. We'll go ahead and do either we'll request it from the developers, or we can actually just scan this document ourselves and we'll post it on the website.
Yeah.
And provide all of you a copy of that as well.
I think it will be better off if we can get it from them, because there's a lot of scanning.
Sure.
Or if they have like a small format, more like a presentation, just like a brief PowerPoint presentation.
You would like the presentation that they are going to provide to the village board that night to be put on the website, if they have a PowerPoint or something to that effect?
Correct, but if anything, I would like to have that at least a week to 2 weeks prior to the meeting. So if we can get that going, I guess. That's my feeling. I'm not sure what the rest of the board is.
Yeah, I was just going to say that it's really helpful to have electronic copies of submissions, just in the future, just so that we're saving the trees here. That'd be my request.
I think, if I may comment, that wasn't an oversight when the RFP was put out. We should have requested a PDF format of the proposal. So we'll make sure that happens in the future.
Okay, so would this board like the actual proposals to be put on the website? So I can request a PDF?
I mean, I guess I would like to see them, either resubmitted as an electronic. I mean, clearly all these documents were created through some electronic means before they were sent to us. So if they could just give us the electronic documents of the physical documents they received, I think that would do it. Is everybody okay with that?
That's perfect. We'll do that.
Yeah, I would appreciate that.
Yes. At this point, I agree. I wouldn't throw out any proposals as of yet. This is the first time the public is hearing what the three options are. So I'm definitely for posting the proposal or new presentation that they would give that night to the board, the public can see, and that way they can kind of get an idea. I would also like to discuss, and we don't have to go into it tonight, but at least before that work session, how we can verify the funds of certain
We will continue to
developers.
go through the investigation, and I continue my discussions
Yeah.
with them, and we'll make sure that if we can get that information, we'll get it over to the board so the board can make the best decision.
Great. And then secondly, for those who are here and those who are watching, the reason why you even have a developer who took it amongst themselves to propose a village grant is because it's the first time that we actually are accepting private-public partnerships. Not to say that we're going to go with one that is like that, but we are open to all ideas, and that all three of these are still ideas at this point.
All right.
Okay.
So you will work on the scheduling
Yes,
and look forward to learning about these more deeply going forward.
yes, we'll do that.
Thank you.
Thank you for accommodating my 5-minute update on community choice aggregation. When we last left this topic, as you know, you passed a resolution authorizing the community choice aggregation program pending receipt of a positive recommendation from the Solicitor General. We did receive the recommendation that it is not subject to a referendum. However, we looked at it with Sustainable Westchester's committee, and they have decided the best way to protect ourselves going forward would be to pass a local law. I spoke just this afternoon and updated myself that the local law that I actually emailed out this afternoon meets with their approval, and I would like to get this on for discussion in the near future, the earliest possible date being July 1st, but we need to pass a resolution on Wednesday to do that. So, as you know, this is an aggregation program whereby we join forces with a number of other communities with the assistance of Sustainable Westchester, and we go out for a proposal to get bulk rates on your electric and gas. So this is a way to have a choice in terms of your utility provider. So your default utility provider. We would assess what proposals come forward, and with the aggregation of communities, we hope to get the best possible rate. So this is an opportunity for the village to move forward with this program, and we need to do that by local law, and we'll be adding a chapter, with the board's approval, we'll be adding a chapter to the village code. So that's what we're doing.
Great. So do we need to have a public discussion of it tonight, or can we just put it on the agenda for next week?
It would be on for a resolution calling for a public hearing. So you're welcome to have that discussion when the resolution comes before you.
And speaking of public hearings, just because as people can plan for next week, the public hearing for 2-way Spring Street is still open for next week, correct?
Yes, the adjourn date is also next week.
Right. So to elaborate on that, 7:30 next Wednesday, June 17th. If you have any experience or thoughts or ideas or concerns about the traffic patterns that are at Five Corners, particularly as it relates to the Spring Street 2-way that has been a pilot program for the last year, now is your time to please come forward and be heard on that. So that'll be next Wednesday, June 17th at the courthouse on Spring Street.
We do also have another local law on that evening, and it is the recognition that passenger sport utility vehicles exceed the maximum weight limit that you currently have in your parking ordinance.
Right.
So we're
But
addressing
nobody's
that.
concerned about that. That just
That's
makes it
not
easier for people to get a
controversial.
hardship.
That's actually
Yes.
a really positive change.
Okay. All right.
Thanks. The last item on the agenda is actually a proposal of a resolution for the board to support the New York State wage board rate regarding raising the minimum wage to $22. What the resolution now says for fast food workers. But so this is before you for discussion, and if you're unable to do this, we can bring it to the next legislative meeting next Wednesday. One of the things though that I know that
This is a resolution that I brought to the board's attention, based on, well, there's a number of different reasons why I feel very strongly about this. Even though our legislative action isn't binding in any way, it's still sending a message to the governor about the fact that there are workers, specifically fast food workers who work for large corporations, who are frankly well underpaid, and many of them are eligible for welfare and food stamps and other benefits. And this in and of itself is corporate welfare. I think it's terrible. I think it's disgusting. I think that it's time for fast food workers to get $15 an hour and get a living wage. I think more of these things need to happen. I think we need to send a message to corporate America that people need to have a living wage, and I feel very strongly about this. I think we need to tell the governor that this is really important. We need to tell the state legislature that this is important. We need to tell the federal government this is important, but this is one small step for workers in fast food restaurants who not only protested here in New York, but all over the country. And this is just the right thing to do. And I hope I will get my fellow trustees in there soon. Thank you.
Yes, and I'll just elaborate on that point, the corporate welfare point. It's not just to pay fast food workers more money per hour because we think that would be a nice thing to do for fast food workers. All of us who pay taxes, and that's all of us in one form or another, are part of our taxes are devoted to food stamps and public assistance. And if a corporation is not paying a living wage to their employees, and those employees are collecting public assistance, then you, as a taxpayer, are actually subsidizing their income. What this is saying is perhaps the fast food restaurants should pay a living wage rather than having the taxpayers subsidize people so that the corporations can save money on their hourly rate. So I look forward to supporting it.
The only thing that I want to add, Mayor, is that Trustee DeRayo had asked that a couple of changes to make to the resolution, and that would be to include all workers in the county, not just the fast food workers. So that's something that, if you feel, we can change it.
Yeah, Trustee DeRayo, who's not present, wanted to expand the nature of our resolution, and I certainly can't argue with Trustee DeRayo on the face of it. However, I believe we need to take smaller steps, and I believe this particular Fight for 15 has been something that a lot of people have worked very hard on, and we've gotten the governor to panel this wage board to help this particular group of workers right now, and I want to see this get passed. I mean, we're not going to get it all done at once, but if we can get this done for these hard-working fast food workers and give them a living wage and give them a better quality of life, and not have these corporations supported by our tax dollars, I think that's an important statement, and I think I would ask that we leave it as it is. I understand Trustee DeRayo's intentions, but I think we need to pass this as it is this evening.
I'm supportive of passing this as it is because what we're actually doing is we're not setting a law. What we're doing is we're supporting an action that's already being proposed by the wage board that has been established by Governor Cuomo.
Yes, to echo that, this is a symbolic effort that this board supports. This initiative that has been pushed at a national level, state level, and county level, and just as a small little assignment for those who are kind of new to the initiative or just want to look into it more, just do the math. How much, if you worked full-time, if you had a full-time job right here in Ossining, would you be able to rent, live, get food, have a quality of life, and be able to live here? And the answer is no, fortunately. So.
That's all I have for this evening, but actually the board, I would like that the board go into executive session to discuss a personal matter on an individual employee.
Yes, can we make a motion? Do we have to cite all of our executive session subjects and the fact that we'll be moving to another building? Okay, if someone could please make a motion. We're getting kicked out of this building, so I'm going to ask somebody to make a motion that we move for executive session across the street, down the block a little bit, to Village Hall to discuss matters of personnel of specific persons as well as collective bargaining.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. All right, thank you, sir. And with that, Thank you very much for joining us for this community meeting here at the library. Hope you will join us again next week. It was wonderful to have dozens of people in the room. Next week, you were right in front of the camera, my friend. Next week, we will be at the courthouse on Spring Street. This meeting is adjourned. Good night.